Hello friends, it's me, and today, Film Theory. I solved the plot of the new Superman movie and its sequel from the Film Theories. Together, let's go, let's start!
I know the plot of the new Superman all from just its first teaser, and better yet, I know the plot of the sequel they haven't even announced yet. Yeah, really. So if you're excited for the film and just can't wait for it, take a seat and let me tell you exactly how it's gonna roll out. Hello Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that believes a man can fly, before promptly falling to the ground in the Yamcha death pose. Speaking of...
Yamcha death pose! Hello Internet, welcome to Film Theory. Hi!
Did y'all see the new teaser for the new Superman reboot? This thing was all over my feed and everyone is excited about it.
Look up! Look up!
Oh my god!
Crypto is best boy!
And you know what? That also includes me. I love Superman. The big blue Boy Scout has always been a favorite hero of mine, so I'm hella excited for this movie. Like, being real, I've actually been planning on doing this theory on Superman since the movie was announced. We had a script all the way back in like December of 2023 before we had like any details about the movie. And that script predicted that Crypto was going to be in this movie before like any of that information came out. Needless to say, we got this video made just about as quickly as physically possible for us after this trailer dropped. Between writing and editing, it always takes us about 2 weeks to get a video made, and of course, this teaser dropped the second theorist was ramping down for the holidays. Gosh darn you, James Gunn, this better not be the start of a trend where you drop stuff as soon as we go on vacation. Anyway, this movie has a lot of pressure on its shoulders. Not only does DC need a massive win after the disasters that were The Flash and Joker 2, not only does this need to live up to and justify recasting Henry Cavill for the main character, not only will this be the movie that will make or break the new DCU, but along with Marvel's Fantastic Four, it has people wondering if it can revive the genre, now that people are calling the 2020s the end of the superhero era. Will it be able to do—
Especially because this is a make or break moment. It's a double sword.
that? I don't know. Honestly, I just want it to be a good movie first and foremost. But of course, I wouldn't be a very good theorist if I didn't overthink something about the movie, right? Well, thankfully, despite just being a minute and a half long with basically no dialogue, DC head honcho and Superman director James Gunn still managed to pack this thing full of a ton of detail. Enough that I believe I can predict the entire plot of this thing, based solely on what we see here in this teaser and other quotes from Gunn and DC. And if that seems like a superhuman feat, well, get a load of this. Not only do I believe I can predict the plot of this Superman movie, but also its inevitable sequel. You heard that right. I'm going to tell you the plots for the next 2 Superman movies, all based on one teaser. And if I'm right, well, just call my superpower theorizing. Put on your capes, loyal theorists. We're about—
Okay, look, I think that is speculating way too much, but let's join aboard.
to go up, up, and away. Alright, just so we're on the same page here, the only sources I'm going to be using for this theory are either official ones or publicly available ones. That means the teaser, casting announcements, public set photos, and things from official sources like James Gunn or DC themselves. I will not be looking at any plot leaks or insider information for this at all. As for our methodology, we're going to be looking at the teaser frame by frame and dissecting everything James Gunn has said about this movie, comparing that against the source material that inspired both this version of Superman and this story, and then identifying the themes I believe this story is going to be following. From there, using the rules of storytelling, we should absolutely be able to work out the plot of this film. So, with all that being said,
Part 1.
The setup and what we know. Well, just from a surface level, we know this is not an origin story for Superman. This comes straight from James Gunn, who said, quote, "Superman's already existing. Lois and Clark already know each other. Lex hates Superman's guts from the beginning, although they don't know each other personally." That makes sense. Everyone knows Superman's origin story at this point, and we don't need to see it again. Additionally, Gunn said that most of the trailer's footage takes place from the beginning of the movie, though, quote, "there are a couple moments that are from later," end quote. We'll just need to keep that in mind while we're putting together the plot from this teaser. Okay, that's some broad strokes, but what about something more concrete or specific? Well, we can also tell exactly when this movie takes place. A newspaper from the set is dated Monday, May 19th, and 2025 is a year that has May 19th fall on a Monday. 2025 is the year the movie's coming out, and there's a lot of modern tech in it like cell phones, so yeah, that checks out. Likewise, this story exists pretty far into the DCU. From both Creature Commandos and the parts of Peacemaker that are still canon, we know that superpowers have been around for a long long time in this universe. And in the teaser, we see a team of pretty established superheroes already: Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, and the Green Lantern, Guy Gardner. Finally, the teaser, set photos, and casting announcements have also shown us that characters like Metamorpho, Rick Flag Sr. from Creature Commandos, the Engineer from The Authority, and a mysterious character with a big U on his chest are all going to appear. That last one is either a villain named Ultraman or Ulysses, not sure which yet. Strangely, we also know that a lot of these superhumans seem to work for billionaires. Both the Engineer and Ultraman/Ulysses are henchmen for Lex Luthor, while Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific all wear matching uniforms with the logos of billionaire Maxwell Lord on them. It's kind of like they're pro athletes or something. Now, all of that is fairly surface level, but we can learn a lot more about the themes of the story being told here if we look at what inspired this film. Gunn has said that this version of Superman is, quote, the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way, guided by human kindness in a world that sees kindness as old-fashioned. And when asked by a fan for a list of what inspired his take on the character, Gunn gave them a lot of options. They're all on screen here, I'm not gonna list them all out, but big ones that should stick out for us as film buffs are the Christopher Reeve Superman and Superman the Animated Series.
So you're not such a Boy Scout after all. Never even made it to my first merit badge.
Just classics, we love it. Oh, and also, DC themselves said that these storylines here directly influenced and inspired Gunn while making this story. Now, tonally, all of these comics and stories really lean into the hopeful part of Superman, the version of the character that will do the right thing no matter what, even at the cost of his own wants, needs, or even his life. A great example of this is All-Star Superman, which is all about Superman doing as much good as he can in the days before he dies. Even as
This is good. It sends a positive message that being a hero is showing selflessness. Do not be selfish, do not be self-centered, do not care for self first, care for others. Place other people as priority over you. That is good messaging. That is sadly quite missing in this day and age. Thank you so much, James Gunn. Thank you.
his own life is ending, he wants to set the Earth and humanity up for success, inspiring even his enemies to be better.
If it had mattered to you, Luthor, you could have saved the world years ago.
While I don't expect Superman to die in this movie, I expect a lot of the same ideas and vibe to be in this film. And before we move on, another story that really stuck out to me here was Kingdom Come. This is probably one of the best stories in DC's history, all about an older Superman coming out of retirement into a world full of violent, reckless heroes, bringing hope and morality back to a cynical world. Does that sound familiar? Well, it should, because it's kind of exactly what this movie is trying to do. Regardless of what you thought about them, DC's movies over the last decade under Zack Snyder's leadership were darker. They were more violent and cynical. That's not a value judgment, it's just a fact, and this new James Gunn DCU seems like a rebuke of that. It's intentionally doing something completely different and bringing a real brightness and hope back to these characters. And I think
especially in our real life events. We're living in a world where turmoil, disturbance, political shift here and there is very for the common folks, for the common people like you and me. What we want is kindness, positivity, like a brightful future to look forward to. Thank you for this movie. I'm looking forward to it.
I think it's safe to say that all of that was on the top of Gunn's mind while crafting this Superman, because even his emblem, the S on his chest, is taken directly from Kingdom Come. This Superman is carrying on the legacy of that story. And speaking of legacy, well, though this movie is now just called Superman, when it was first announced, it had a slightly different title, Superman Legacy. And that is massively important, both for this movie and the DCU slate as a whole. See, a lot of the announced DCU projects involve the idea of legacy, transition, generational change, torch passing, family. I mean, just think about it. Brave and the Bold is all about Batman and his son. Lanterns is about an experienced Green Lantern taking a new recruit under his wing. Paradise Lost is a prequel all about Wonder Woman's mothers. Other projects like Teen Titans are about younger heroes coming into their own. Dynamic Duo is about the different generations of Robins. Heck, even Creature Commandos is about the successor to the Suicide Squad. Now, Superman has all the power in the world, but if he wants to keep his identity as Clark Kent a secret, he should be using the sponsor for today's theory, Incogni. True story. My mom loves bird watching. She has this bird feeder that has a little camera on it and sends me links to pictures of her birds. Well, right after I clicked that link for the first time, all of a sudden I was getting tons and tons of ads for similar bird feeder cameras. Like, that's weird, right? This sort of thing happens because your data is being collected and sold by thousands of companies without your knowledge and consent. And while it's cute when it's about a bird feeder, it's not so much when it's about your full name, email, home address, phone, and social security numbers. But thankfully, you have the right to demand that these companies delete your info. But doing that could take you months or even years to do manually. There's so many better things to be doing with that time, like helping the people of Metropolis or breaking a big story for the Daily Planet. Thankfully, this is where Incogni comes in. See, Incogni will reach out to these companies for you, and they'll do all the heavy lifting, Superman style. So they'll request that these companies get your personal data off the market and deal with any objections from these shady companies looking to make a buck off of you. You've probably heard me talk about Incogni before because they're long-running partners of the channel, and I do use their service. I love checking in to see their progress, and last time I looked in November, they'd completed 330 requests and saved me 246 hours. Just 2 months later, here in January, and now it's all the way up to 389 requests completed and over 291 hours saved. If you want to keep your personal information private, you can get 60% off an annual plan by going to incogni.com/filmtheory and using the code FILMTHEORY. That's incogni.com/FILMTHEORY, or just click the link in the description and use code FILMTHEORY to get 60% off an annual plan. Thanks again to Incogni for sponsoring this episode, and now let's fly back into our Superman prediction. So, okay, how does all of that apply to Superman? Well, other than the themes of being hopeful in a bleak world like we just discussed, I bet that this story involves Clark balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. And there just so happens to be a great Superman villain that can take that internal conflict and turn it into an external one, Brainiac.
Brainiac, what is it?
Look, I just want some pants. A decent pair of pants.
Yeah, so this is Brainiac, one of the oldest Superman villains and pretty much his nemesis outside of Lex Luthor. He's basically a living computer, an AI from another planet obsessed with collecting every possible scrap of knowledge in the universe. He also happens to be one of the biggest Superman villains that we've never seen in a live-action film, so there's fertile ground there. So why do I think Brainiac is going to be a major player in this story, even though he hasn't been revealed at all or even cast yet? Well, a couple of reasons. First off, there's the giant energy orb floating behind Lois and Clark in the first teaser image and trailer that is the same color scheme as Brainiac, purple and green throughout his many appearances, as well as seeming more like alien tech as opposed to something more human-based like Luthor. And secondly, one of the main storylines that DC stated influenced Gunn while he was writing this film was Superman Brainiac, a story where he was the main villain. This one just seems like a layup, and when you look at Brainiac's whole deal, you can see why this makes a lot of sense for the story. See, in both Superman Brainiac and the story that introduced him back in the 50s, Brainiac had preserved an entire city of Kryptonians and their knowledge, literally shrinking them and putting them inside of a bottle. And in a lot of continuities like the DC animated universe that we know influenced Gunn here, Brainiac is even just straight up a Kryptonian AI. If this Superman is one that's wrestling with his legacy, his Kryptonian heritage versus his human upbringing, what better way to make that into something tangible for this story? Here's a villain with the knowledge Clark wants, but he's also a danger for his new home. There's great multi-layered conflict sitting right there, and the drama writes itself, especially if other villains like Luthor can discover it and take advantage of it. Alright, so that—
So what do you do? What will you do? Prioritize your lineage or prioritize your upbringing? Are you a Kryptonian or are you a human? Biologically speaking, Superman is Kryptonian, but his values are very human.
That's a lot of information. We sort of laid out a lot of pieces for a complicated puzzle, and putting them together will get us to
Part 2!
the plot of Superman. It's May of 2025. Clark Kent has been working at the Daily Planet for a while now with other reporters like Lois Lane, all while moonlighting as Superman. But he's still very much the new kid on the block. Other heroes like Mr. Terrific, Guy Gardner, and Hawkgirl have been doing this for much longer, enough so that they become part of the machine of society. Hero teams are often funded by corporations or billionaires like Maxwell Lord, or used by the government for secret missions as seen in Creature Commandos and the Suicide Squad. We actually see Mr. Terrific in some sort of of desert fighting what look like mercenary commandos, probably on one of these privately funded missions. People are familiar with superheroes and these antics, but maybe they don't really trust them because all of these heroes are flawed and cynical. But Superman? He's different. He seems to have more power than these other heroes, but he's nothing like them. He's not dark or cynical. He does the right thing and is impossibly good. The kind of guy who stops to help save a cat from a tree or help an old lady cross the street. He's just an old-fashioned hero, all because he was raised with the ideals of truth, justice, and the American way by Ma and Pa Kent in Smallville, Kansas. A scene showcasing these values will almost certainly be our introduction to Clark and Superman in this world. He's headed to work but keeps getting distracted and delayed by his superheroics getting to the Daily Planet late. We can see by the clock on the wall in this shot that Clark doesn't get in until 10:50. Clark's co-worker Lois Lane makes note of this. She's a smart cookie and has likely deduced that there's more to Clark than meets the eye. I wouldn't be surprised if she's already figured out that he's Superman. Anyway, Clark doesn't really know a lot about himself or his origins. He knows his parents found him in a spaceship and he's discovered the Fortress of Solitude, so he knows he's an alien and maybe a bit about Krypton, but that's about it. But that changes when he discovers an alien supercomputer intelligence. Maybe it's a Kryptonian AI in the Fortress of Solitude. Maybe it's an unrelated probe that crash lands on Earth. Either way, this Brainiac promises Clark knowledge about his past and his people, but Clark either is having trouble getting to that knowledge, or maybe he doesn't like what Brainiac has to say. Either way.
Or maybe there might be some nefarious situation, I guess.
He keeps Brainiac in the Fortress of Solitude, along with other relics of his alien heritage, like Crypto the Superdog. But that alien heritage has unknowingly earned Clark a lot of enemies, the biggest of which is Lex Luthor. See, just like what happens in the Superman Birthright comics, Lex is a smart guy, like really smart. Enough so that he's never really felt at home on Earth. He's never quite fit in with his fellow humans, and yet here is this Superman that is clearly something alien, and people love him? No, something's off, and even though they haven't met yet, Luthor does not trust Superman at all. So he wants to find proof that Superman isn't as super as he appears. Using all of his resources, he has probably been able to track Superman's activity up in the Arctic with the Fortress of Solitude, hatching a plan to break in. All he needs is a distraction. Soon enough, Luthor gets one in what is probably the big action set piece for the film's first act, as a kaiju attacks Metropolis. During this attack, Superman saves many lives, including a little girl that almost gets crushed, and stops the monster from crashing into at least one building. Eventually, Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific show up, and Superman helps them take down the kaiju, but not before some serious damage is done to the city. Superman is also hit by a fireball during this fight, burning his suit. After the fight, the Supers regroup at a nearby building. We see them arriving at this building in a set video, and there are several kids ecstatic to see Superman. Maybe the little girl he saved told her friends about him, but the rest of the crowd isn't as happy. This man in the orange vest approaches Superman and probably tells him that he could have and should have done more. People died. Isn't he supposed to be a hero? The cynical crowd turns on Superman, throwing things at him as he enters the building. The other heroes also come in and talk to Clark, perhaps telling him that this is just the way things are. Saddened, Superman flies away to his Fortress of Solitude, only to find it robbed. Yeah, Luthor may have caused this kaiju attack himself, or just taken advantage of it, but either way, he uses it as an opportunity to break into the Fortress of Solitude with his henchman, the Engineer and Ultraman/Ulysses. We know this thanks to an extra scene put into a version of the trailer only shown in theaters, which sees them walking into the fortress. Here, the group wreck the place and end up stealing Brainiac as proof that Superman is an alien, and Superman arrives too late to stop them, and too late to save some of his beloved Kryptonian robot helpers. We know this has to be right after the kaiju attack because Superman and his suit are still covered in the same burns and soot. Anyway, things are only gonna get worse for Clark. Just like in the Superman Birthright comic, Lex is going to use Brainiac to spread information about Superman's Kryptonian origins, framing him as an alien invader. Superman is going to have a bit of an identity crisis over this. But what if he is just an alien scout for an invasion? He no longer has Brainiac to ask about his history, but he can't let that get in the way of him helping people. Despite everything, Superman is still unwaveringly good. doing what he thinks is right, just like we see in the All-Star Superman storyline. This itself will inspire hope in people around the world, just like we see with this kid raising the Superman flag in the teaser. Angered, Lex will escalate things, continuing to frame Superman for increasingly awful things and working with the US government to capture him. This will lead to a battle with Ultraman/Ulysses, and eventually Superman's arrest with Rick Flag Sr. from Creature Commandos. We know that that's gonna happen from these set images and scenes from the teaser. Now, here's where things get a bit murky. Since most of the teaser footage is from earlier on in the movie, guessing the back half of this plot will be based more on the rules of storytelling and the stories that inspired this film's plot. But we can still get a pretty good idea. Clearly, Superman will be imprisoned in a strange jail for metahumans, while Lex starts targeting Superman's close friends and supporters like Lois and the Daily Planet. Lex will also probably begin tinkering with Brainiac to extract as much value out of Superman's alien technology as possible. And this is not going to turn out well for Lex, as he's tricked by—
Can we just pause for first and recognize that I'm actually crying just now? No, it's actual tears. Oh, okay, continue, sorry.
A Brainiac who begins to accumulate knowledge and power for himself. At some point, likely driven by the fact that people in his personal life like Lois are in danger, just like we see in the Superman Ending Battle comic, Superman will break out of this prison in a big fight. I'm betting that this is where he gets injured and lands in the snow from the teaser, calling Krypto to take me home. And I bet that home
Country road. sorry.
takes him to isn't what Clark expects. He may think that they're going to the Fortress of Solitude, but instead, Krypto takes him to Lois in Metropolis, his real home. By this point, Lois will have definitely figured out that Clark is Superman, and the two will embrace. Anyway, the third act will almost certainly see Brainiac gaining enough power to betray Luthor and attack Metropolis with the giant energy ball we see throughout the teaser. This is more or less what happens in the Superman Brainiac comic. Cue a big third act battle, Superman realizing that he doesn't need to choose between his Kryptonian heritage and human upbringing, embracing both parts of his legacy and using them to defeat Brainiac. The cynical people of the DCU are inspired by his goodness, while Luthor is furious and forms his next plot to take down what he sees as an alien freak. Roll credits, the end. Alright, so given the minute and a half of footage we have and all of the behind—
And to be honest with you, just by the description from Lee, from the film theorists, just from pure description, I'm already crying. I'm already tearing up. And you know, guys, men, grown men, we don't cry as much. But when we do cry, it actually means something. It actually means something significant. Thank you so much, Lee. Thank you.
behind-the-scenes information and interviews, that's how I see the plot of Superman playing out. But more importantly than that, I think all of this information that we've laid out here also gives us a good idea of where Superman's going after this movie. And that means it's time to talk about
Part 3.
the Superman sequel.
Sequel.
Remember how I said that this hopeful, old-school Superman emerging in a world full of darker, cynical heroes felt like Gunn sort of answering the criticisms of previous DC movies, looking at the gritty take on this universe created by Zack Snyder and deciding to do something completely different on purpose? Well, that might be a bit weird because one of the films being worked on right now is called The Authority. Stick with me, this is important, I promise. See, The Authority was originally a superhero team published by an independent company with the premise of, what if the Justice League were bad? Yeah, this was way before stuff like The Boys made that idea mainstream. And the engineer, one of Lex's henchmen here in this film, is actually a core member of the Authority, which I expect to carry over here in the DCU. Anyway, this team was the epitome of 90s edge. Sure, they were heroes, I guess, but they weren't good. So, how are these characters possibly going to fit in with this brighter, more hopeful universe that Superman is spearheading? Well, earlier we talked about how this version of Superman was old-fashioned in a modern world. Specifically, Gunn described him as the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way, a catchphrase commonly associated with Superman. Well, I don't think that wording was something that Gunn just threw out off the cuff. One of the most famous Superman stories is What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. This was later adapted into an animated movie, Superman vs. the Elite. This story is all about Superman coming into conflict with a new group of edgy heroes called the Elite, led by the telekinetic Manchester Black. In addition to being cooler than old-school heroes like Superman, the Elite also thought themselves better because they adapted to what they saw as the modern world. They straight up killed the bad guys because, well, why shouldn't they? And while a lot of the world agrees with the Elite's approach, Superman doesn't, and they inevitably end up fighting. In case the very subtle metaphor isn't landing for you here, this is a story about Superman facing off against representations of the mature deconstructions of superheroes that became popular in the 90s and doing the exact same thing to them.
But now that, okay, I'm speaking from a point of view of someone that is living in the year 2025. We know what happens in the past. The deconstruction is important, to get me wrong, but when do we stop? When do we put a break to it? Because it's very easy to cross the line and deconstruct so much that it put unnecessary turmoil onto society. It put unnecessary burden, unnecessary disturbance to the common folks like you and me that do not have any part to play in. But these things come into us. We do not want any trouble. We just want to live our lives peacefully as normal citizens, commoners, as folks. Let's be honest, this construction, this sort of deconstruction is important, yes. But too much of it is bad. Very bad.
How does it feel, Black? How does it feel to be deconstructed?
Superman vs. the Elite was literally all about Superman punching the idea of characters like Homelander or Omni-Man or the Authority in the face, embracing the hokey, old-fashioned ideas of truth and justice to beat that cynicism. Something that becomes all the more clear when you learn that the Elite were created as a direct response by DC to the Authority. This entire concept is just a clapback. It's like Kendrick and Drake. Heck, after DC bought the Authority's publisher and incorporated the team into the DC universe, they put the Elite's leader, Manchester Black, on the Authority to just flat out combine the ideas. Side note, I would bet cold hard cash that Manchester will be on the DCU version of the team, but I digress. All in all, this sort of generational conflict is incredible storytelling. And do you know who else loves those ideas? James Gunn. Seriously, go back and watch through his filmography, both as a director and a screenwriter. Gunn loves to have characters learn to be better than their predecessors, like with Star-Lord.
If you kill me, you'll be just like everybody else.
What's so wrong with that?
And also having
What's so wrong about that? What's so wrong about being just another individual? I am Humdrum Singaporean, and I recognize the importance of being grounded to reality, not just flying off and not flying off too much to the point in which you cross the line. What's so wrong about being relatable? What's so wrong about being a commoner? What's so wrong about being a mundane individual? What's so wrong about that?
having characters embrace what makes them silly as the thing that actually makes them great. He did it with Polka Dot Man in the Suicide Squad.
I'm a superhero!
With Rocket Raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy.
What's a raccoon?
Ain't no thing like me except me. The name's Rocket. Rocket Raccoon.
And heck, even Scooby-Doo.
Who do you think
Scooby-Doo,
Scooby?
Yeah, James Gunn wrote the Scooby-Doo movies, by the way. That's just a fun fact for you. So, Superman versus the Elites, or rather, Superman versus...
Wait, can you just comment down below if you're still watching this video? Comment down below if you actually knew that. I did not know that. Surprise, I guess.
The Authority, Superman versus the concept of heroes should be cynical? That is exactly the vibe of sincerity through satire that Gunn really seems to love, and why it's going to be the plot of Superman 2. It would fit with the old-fashioned Superman that he set up here in this universe, with the idea of legacy that the whole DCU franchise is using as a core value, and with the Authority film that's being developed standing out from the entire rest of the slate. It's setting up a natural crossover between these corners of his universe in a way that makes sense and will make the cinematic universe stronger. Man, we really just figured out the plot for 2 movies with like a minute and a half of teaser footage, didn't we? Feeling a bit super myself right now. Anyway, until next time, look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. Nope, it's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory. Who is the worst Joker? Okay, yeah, we all know it was Jared Leto, but I mean, which one of the Jokers is the worst criminal? If we tally up the crimes they commit, which one of them is actually the clown prince of crime?
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed watching this video. This video is from the Film Theorist. Thank you so much. It's brilliant. I actually tear up, a lot of laughter, and oh no, I think you did a great job. Like emotional roller coaster, up down, up down, up down. So thank you so much. Comment down below. What do you think about this video? What do you think about my reaction to it? Hope you like my review to it, and thank you. But hey, that's just a theory, a film theory, and cut. Thank you. Subscribe. No, but seriously, touch my heart. Thank you so much for support. Thank you.